Hello guys, my name is Amit Sani and I welcome you in this Daily Hindu Analysis video. 21st December it is, and important issues. In articles we are discussing a lot of information for the GS paper 4 also. It's not an information, actually it's a kind of a experience and the rational thinking and the analytics that you need to apply here, because for the GS paper 4 case studies there is no particular syllabus, there is no particular learning or a particular course. This is all your basic knowledge, this is all your approach and maximum understanding based on the facts. And how do you see the present situation and how the protests are going on, how people are reacting to the different situations, and you just keep learning their experiences and approaches. How do we manage the people, the masses, and what are the typical problems and how people react to those things. These experiences are going to shape your preparation for the GS paper 4. So very important issues are going on for that topic. 70% off is going on all the courses till 25th of December. It's a Christmas sale and the numbers are given. You can call on those numbers and you can subscribe to the paid content, the MCQ course, the current affair course by Gaurav sir. A lot of important videos are coming. Very important exam help is there, and these two numbers are given where you can call and you can ask for your doubts and any query regarding the payments. And the PDF you will get on Telegram channel, whose link is given on the Facebook group here. So you can send me the request on Facebook, and here you can follow me on Instagram too. And some words that I found today, very important words, use them into sentences. First issue: Army to sign deal for 6 Apache attack helicopters. Apache attack helicopters, they are by Boeing company in America, and right now Mi-35 attack helicopters are Russian helicopters that we are using, and the deal was signed for Apache helicopters for IAF, and 22 Apaches were promised and 8 of them were recently inducted as the first batch of 8 Apaches based in Pathankot. So Indian Air Force has got 8 of them, and 14 of them they will be delivered by next year. Obviously they are replacing the aging Russian Mi-35 attack helicopters in service. So it's a kind of a very important information from the exam point of view, because Americans are replacing Russians here in this area. So that's important. Now there is a particular Army Aviation Corps under Indian Army, and that was IAF, which got its 22 Apaches deal. So these 6 AH-64E Apache attack helicopters, they will be in addition to these 22. These are different. Now it is an advanced stage and the file is now with the Cabinet Committee on Security, which is gonna be headed by Prime Minister of India, and finally they will take the decision on the procurement of it. But this was actually cleared by the Defence Acquisition Council in 2017 when Arun Jaitley ji was Defence Minister. So it was approved at that time, and Indian Army Aviation Corps is gonna get these 6 additional attack helicopters, 64E version. There are various versions of Apache. This is 64E version. So the details are given here. Boeing attack helicopter 64 Apache, American turboshaft attack helicopter, and target acquisition, night vision systems are all planted on it, and it's a very potent machine there. Next issue: the Digital Communication Commission (DCC) panel okays spectrum auction plan. Spectrum auction is one of the most important deal in the telecommunication sector. This sector is going through a lot of issues. Many challenges are there, and this was certainly a sunrise industry, but right now many issues are going on. 5G services are the core issue here. You see, this communication commission on Friday plans to auction over 8300 megahertz of spectrum, and out of this 8300 megahertz, 6050 megahertz are allocated for 5G services. So that's a very important detail here. In a setback to the telecom service providers who were demanding a particular reduction in the reserve prices, so this particular announcement has given no reduction in the reserve prices there. So the bid is going to start in March, April next year, and the recommendation of TRI are operational now. So this data is important. Many important articles will come on this issue because this is not a simple issue, and bigger article will come. And 5G services are a very important issue because they are going to be very, very fast, and in comparison to 4G and 3G, they are going to be uniquely implemented because the service is a bit different and the speed is way faster there. So important for GS paper 3. Next two issues important for GS paper 3 from the economy section. One side there is the issue of RBI and open market operations, OMOs. They are very important operations by RBI, and it is the issue of ETF. We had discussed the Bharat Bond ETF, and as I told you, it is the first corporate bond exchange traded fund. So let's talk about the OMOs, open market operations. There is a situation of liquidity all the time in the country. Sometimes the liquidity is enough and it is going up to a certain mark, then we need to control the liquidity in the market. Sometimes it is very less, and when the liquidity is very less, then the inflation also comes down, and both the situations, they need to be balanced. So RBI does this task through OMOs. Government bonds are issued because RBI is the government's banker. So this government's banker sells or buys government bonds on behalf of the government there. So what is a bond? Bond, if I take 10,000 rupees from you and I give you a piece of paper and I write that 10% interest I'm gonna pay on this particular amount of money, and after the maturity period you will get your money back and I will get the bond back. So government bonds are those kind of a contract only. When the liquidity is high in the market, then RBI needs to suck the liquidity out of the system, so it sells the government bonds at that time. So it gives bonds to the people and it takes money. When the liquidity is less, then it takes back or it buys the government bonds at that time and it infuses the liquidity into the market there. So this is the way of open market operations. They are one of the most important operations in terms of liquidity management by RBI. So here they are talking about the operation twist, the term which was given for a particular condition where the yield on the government bond that was expected to be very high, and on Friday yields on government bonds dropped sharply after the RBI announced purchasing of long-term securities and selling of short tenor ones. So you see the issue of short-term and long-term, that is also important, because if the bonds are for the longer term, that means they will manage the long-term situation. It tells that liquidity right now in our economy is abundant for the short end, but not so much at the longer end. And by making liquidity available at the long end, the move will help in the monetary transmission. It is the statement by the bankers there. So this operation twist turned the market sentiment dramatically because they have decided to go for the selling of short-term ones and the purchasing of the long-term securities there. So they are infusing more money into the market ultimately. So the OMOs is going to be asked in the prelims examination. This is a high possibility here. Next issue, Bharat Bond ETF. Exchange traded funds are like mutual funds only. They always target a particular set of index. This Bharat ETF is having an aim to pool the money and they are gonna invest in the PSU bonds there. So ultimately they are going to raise money for the PSUs there. So it is the first corporate bond ETF in India, and that is getting a good response. It was aimed at the retail investors and it saw a strong response there, with the issue getting subscribed around 1.7 times. Around 12,000 crore rupees they have collected, and this issue was a kind of a good hope for the public sector there, because it is targeting, this ETF is targeting the public sector units there. That's important. As it says, the exchange traded fund will invest only in AAA rated bonds of public sector companies. This Bharat Bond ETF we are talking about. So this sentence may appear as it is in the prelims option, so you will mark it right. Okay, that's important. Next, the article net loss. You see this article and the main article by Surit Parasarthi, they both are talking about a very important issue of internet blockage. Surit Parasarthi talking about the Kashmir situation, how it is impacting and how it is bringing a huge economic damage there. All the aims, developmental processes, they are stuck. Health sector, education sector, the startup sector, they are mainly hit. And here the issue is talking about the justification of internet blockdown. It says disruption of connectivity should be resorted to only in the face of specific threats. You see, security conditions, they are a huge gray area, and it is very difficult to ascertain some threats. Who will tell surely that this threat is gonna be there for sure, and we need to assess these symptoms there. Always these things are subjected to some interpretation. So there is a huge gray area, obviously. But you see, in a democratic setup, when the peaceful protests are going on, then we are observing a particular trend from some years, that the peaceful protests, they start and they are going on according to the constitutional terms. But suddenly, in almost all the movements these days, some anti-social movements, anti-social elements, they enter, and sometimes they are recognized, sometimes they are not. But certainly they are involved in some anti-social activity there. They bring arsons there, they burn buses there, and all those are dangerous activities. Those are spread after some time. So it looks like there is a possibility that these things are done intentionally to label these peaceful protests. This looks like that. Now you see, in these sensitive conditions, anything may happen. We need to save all the dangerous situations there. So as it happened in Delhi and in other several states there, Meghalaya, Tripura, Arunachal Pradesh, complete cut off parts of Assam, West Bengal, Karnataka, Uttar Pradesh, those were deprived of internet access there. So the 144 we discussed yesterday, but now we are discussing the internet blockage there. The communication blockade is very dangerous. Suppose in an area where total blockdown is there and some rioting that starts, if people are getting killed, they cannot even tell to anybody because the communication is totally blocked. So those situations are very, very dangerous. Now you see, that is why we have to be very, very careful when we go for these kind of restrictions there. Now, shutting down of the internet in Delhi and other states as a response to growing protests against the Citizenship Amendment Act is unsophisticated and deeply damaging to the social life and the economy there. Such ham-handed interventions have won for India a place at the head of the table among intolerant countries that routinely shut down the internet to block criticism of the government. In many countries we see, when the protests are targeting the governments and they do not approve their policies, or they are angry because of some issues, then the crackdown is there, and the governments, they target some students, some protesters, some civil society groups and all, and they go for these communication blockades so that any wrong messaging can be controlled. But you see, when they control the wrong messaging, then they suppress the protest also, they suppress the expression also. That's the main issue. Now where to draw that line, where as we were discussing yesterday, where to draw that line where you are regulating and you start suppressing the protest there. Now with the communication blockdown, this is more about suppressing the expression. In Jammu and Kashmir, which has become globally as a dark spot on the internet, and the services which are blocked since 4th of August, the websites and all these are till date blocked, and that has brought a devastating consequence there. What kind of expression is there in people's mind that is totally under the blanket now, and we do not know how they are going to react to that situation. Maybe that's the fear that government is not able to uplift the ban till date, but it is going on, and it is creating more and more danger. Here you see the fate of connectivity is being decided by officers empowered by the temporary suspension of telecom services rules, which came in 2017 under the Telegraph Act of 1885 or the CRPC's section 144. These are the particular sources from where the directions and the regulations they are executed. And now you see, even the court has said use them only in the specific situations there. And many instances of wrong messaging we have seen, like there are specific cases. There were some rumors of child lifters on the social media. Those were rumors, those were not truths, and those messaging were spreading like fire. So at that time we need to stop those things, but those were clear realizations. But where the peaceful protests are going on and they are targeting the government, then the net blackout of the internet has little to do with the rumors and is clearly aimed at muzzling the protests. That's the main issue. Prime Minister, who has fashioned himself as a digital first leader, issued a Twitter appeal to people in Assam on this issue of CAA. But interestingly, those people did not get that message, did not get that Prime Minister's appeal. Why? Because the internet was shut down there. Now, government should be aware that connectivity chokehold that is applied on J&K is proving lethal to entrepreneurship, crippling a new generation running startups, and the women's employment. They all are affected very negatively, and it's a kind of a big blow to the digital and financial infrastructure there and the digital financial transaction issue there. You were promoting the cashless payment, digital payment there, and the internet is not working. So this is all a fail idea. You talk about smart villages, you talk about smart cities there. If the internet is not there, then this is a laughable idea. This doesn't work. And the issue that Kerala High Court affirmed in an order holding access to the net is a fundamental right, and that could not be denied arbitrarily. So it should not be according to the whims of the government. Whenever they think there is rising criticism, then you go for these communication lockdown. This should not happen. This arbitrary decision making is really dangerous in the democratic setup. This is a kind of an authoritarian move. And many instances we have seen in the past where many unjustified decisions were taken. But you see, after some time, what happens in every incident, we see some anti-social elements. They are doing something wrong in the protest, and the whole protest that gets regulated and restricted. That's the issue. You take the example of JNU, you take the example of Jamia Millia, you take the example of states. Everywhere the similar scene is there, and then that playable media today, a big section which is totally trying to manipulate the real situation. They are trying to pose that one particular party is the best party, and they are trying to just label all those groups who are criticizing the government there. So that particular section of media that is only popularizing those things where the protest is going through some anti-social activities, some burning buses, some block down of the roads and all, and these kind of things they show to the people. So the messaging goes like that only these things are happening, and they are damaging the public property there, and they are damaging the government's image there, and these are all wrong people who are doing these protests, and they are not doing any peaceful protest there. That's the thing. And when the peaceful protest that goes on, then they never report it in that same way. So that's the main problem of the manipulation of the issues by the media section. Only the internet media section, they are scrutinizing some crucial issues. They are going with some meaningful debates. Otherwise, these TV media channels, these most of the channels which are there just to provoke people, just to make people emotional, just to confuse them, just to weaken them further. So those are not doing anything good to the country. They are certainly on a path to destroy this nation. So we are expecting some good things only on the internet media there, and that is blocked there. So that issue is really dangerous. Means the TV media, which looks like totally a managed media, that is working, but the internet media is not working. So that issue is really troublesome. Here 134 instances were there in 2018, and the government is unwilling to change this course. Means we have become one of those countries where they do not like criticism, and whenever any protest, any criticism is there, then they go for all communication lockdown or the invocations of 144 like situations there. So they want to control, they want to manage there, and they do not want any criticism. So India is losing face as a democracy because it chooses to sit with authoritarian regimes, and that's really problematic. Now one issue from Andhra Pradesh. A new announcement is there from the Chief Minister YS Jagmohan Reddy, because he is a new Chief Minister, and the last government decided that Amravati is going to be the new capital, and they went for a greenfield capital there. Means there was nothing on the ground at that time, and it was all the land pooling was done. The land was given by the farmers there. They were given the promises of some compensation, some plots and all, and this is how happily they gave their lands to develop the capital there. A lot of work is going on, a lot of things are settled there, and it was supposed to be the main capital of Andhra Pradesh, Amravati. Now YS Jagmohan Reddy says that there must be 3 capitals in Andhra Pradesh, and it will be on the South Africa model, where administrative capital is there in Pretoria, national legislature is there in Cape Town, judicial capital is there in Bloemfontein. So this same issue should be there in Andhra Pradesh, where a decentralized development of the state will be there. So it looks very nice as an idea, but how it will be implemented, that's the main problem. In the starting, the last government made a mistake, where the expert committee appointed by the Home Ministry in 2014 that said that do not go for the greenfield capital, but the Telugu Desam party, the last government, they ignored this particular recommendation there, and they started constructing all these issues there. Now a new notification is there. So what's going to happen with the issues of farmers, the land that they gave, and the promises which were done there, and the compensation issues, they will all hang in the air. So always the weaker people, always the people of this country, they suffer. Different governments come and they announce different things, and sometimes it's all a wastage of money, resource and everything, time, everything, and different announcements according to different ideologies or different parties, those have devastating consequences for the people. But what people can do, here there is a new announcement, and this announcement, the Chief Minister's idea, has now got support from the government appointed GN Rao committee. It has recommended that the assembly's location be retained at Amravati, secretariat to Vishakhapatnam, and High Court to Kurnool. This way it should be established. So what's going to happen to the farmers, we have to see. But this is again a kind of a issue where a new government comes, a new announcement is there, and it is about establishing the new setup of the capital altogether. So it's a huge issue. So always the burden is there on the people there, who do not have any power to say anything against these whims of the parties and the governments there. Important for GS paper 2 especially, and for 1 also. Next, Surith Parasarthi is a very important article on the Kashmir situation. He is making various comments here. He says that Kashmiris were deprived even of any means of finding out what was actually transpiring in August. Remarkably, this state of affairs has scarcely changed since that time. Certain limited channels of communication have been opened up, but the access to the web remains elusive. Without internet today, what people will do, what educational institutes will do, what offices will do, this is understandable, because where do we spend our most of the time? It is all internet based applications like Facebook, WhatsApp and other Twitter issues. So this is one of the longest bans imposed on the internet by an ostensibly democratic government. This kind of long term ban we do not observe right now in most of the countries. This thing is not visible, but this issue has become totally arbitrary in a sense, and the extension to the house arrests and all these things are really problematic. But who is discussing them? We are discussing CAA here. So this is how one issue is managed with the another issue. Here Anuradha Basin, the editor of Kashmir Times, and Ghulam Nabi Azad, LMP, challenge in the Supreme Court of India this issue. 3 judges bench, they heard this issue and the decision is pending. The case presents the court with its first real opportunity to rule decisively on the purport and reach of the right to access the internet. That's the main issue. Means for the first time Supreme Court is gonna give its verdict on a very important issue, where the Kerala High Court said that it's a right for the people, and it is a form of expression, and arbitrarily nobody can control that. So on the access to the internet, this verdict is gonna come. So it is going to be the ultimate ruling, and it is likely to serve as a precedent of some value there. It's going to be very valuable a decision. Ms. Basin's argument rests on a simple premise that the blackout of the internet impinges on her right to freedom of expression. You see, today, without the help of internet, publishing a newspaper is totally impossible. You see, partial lifting is there of the restrictions there, but the journalists, they are finding it very difficult. They are totally hamstrung by the absence of the internet there, and only a pruned version of the newspaper is published. So it's a direct threat on the liberties of the press there. That's the issue, and there are deleterious results, means devastating consequences we are observing there. If you talk about the healthcare, people are denied the right there because indirect impact is there. The services are not working. Even the Ayushman Bharat, people are not able to access there. And the withdrawal of education, the interminable closure of the institution, this is all happening there. Now we talk about the economic damage, the most devastating phenomena. Around 15,000 crore rupees loss is there, and that's the minimum amount for the whole state, which is not a state right now, and this was a state, but 15,000 crore rupees loss is there at the minimum amount, and this is the assessment by Kashmir Chamber of Commerce. So what kind of development we can expect here? This is a loss, a big loss. So in the name of development, the devastation people are observing there, and they are not able to say anything because the communication lockdown is going on. A partial lifting is there, but the websites and all these apps and all these are all banned. So you can imagine the condition of the people there. What is the government stand? They make two primary arguments. One, there is no obligation on them to disclose the orders through which the restrictions have been imposed. Means they have decided about something, they have changed huge issues there, and they will not tell anything about that. Why? Because the national security issue is there. So they are demanding a kind of a leeway by the judges there. So again, we come to the same point as I was discussing yesterday, that government wants us to believe that whatever we are doing, you accept that blindly. Whatever they are doing, they are the best people to do the job, so we have to accept them blindly. But this is not the theme of the democracy. This never happens, and that should never happen, because those are people only. They can make mistake there, and people will have to assess their decision making, their working there. And the issue of accountability is a must in the democracy. Here they are saying that 0% accountability will be there, because we do not have any obligation to tell you why we did that. Now, internet ban, we now know, was made under the temporary suspension of telecom services rules 2017. So now we know the order was based on that. So always a reasoned order have to be there. In a democracy, orders are made to be published. So this reason has to be there for the justification. This cannot be an arbitrary move. And the main issue here, if you talk about the constitutional paradigm, then an even greater principle at stake, the promise of free speech, which is preserved in Article 19(1)(a) of the Constitution. This guarantee contains both an inherent and instrumental value. Inherent means everybody is equal, they have their particular right, nobody can suppress the expression there, and the better dialogue stimulates a more informed polity. Wherever there is a discussion, then the better things will come out. If something is wrong, then that will be proved wrong. If something is good, then that will be followed. This is the issue of dialogue process. With the dialogue process only, people have discussed world wars, they have controlled world wars there. Otherwise, this world would have been devastated by now. So that is the best way. And if the dialogue process is suppressed, if governments are afraid of the dialogue process, then certainly it is not the democracy there. So this is the issue of inherent value. And about the instrumental value, in this issue we have to discuss the Sakal Papers case, where court said that no policy of the state can so much as regulate the circulation of a newspaper, and any such program will directly impinge on the right to freedom of expression. So Miss Bhasin is there in Supreme Court right now, and she is giving this argument. So this is a justified argument that putting a ban on internet and debilitating the newspaper agencies there, that's a direct attack on the right to freedom of expression there. Publishing a newspaper without access to the internet is almost a Sisyphean task there, almost impossible task. So a blanket ban placed on the web will also transgress the guarantee of free speech. So it's a constitutional crime actually, where the arbitrary decision making is there. And you see the issue of national security, that should be discussed. You can never say that these issues cannot be discussed, and whatever they decide, they have to be secretive about that, and nobody can ask any question on that, because in the name of security also, governments can fool people, because many issues are sidelined and nothing is discussed in the country, and economic pressures can be put up there, and many problems can be created in the name of national security there, because the history is filled up with these kind of examples where the issue was of national security but something else happened there. So that is why the suspicions are there, questions are there, and the government has to address all those concerns. Here you see 80% staggering loss of employment among startups in Kashmir that relied on internet today. That's the situation. So nobody here means that there should not be any restriction and they should ignore the national security issue. It is never like that. But what the law demands is that any measure taken by the state in restricting a fundamental right is necessary and proportionate to the goal that it seeks to achieve, and the justification should be there, and the reasoned order must be there. It merely needs to scrutinize whether a wide-ranging ban on the internet on the entire population is justifiable, when even according to the government it is only a minuscule minority who are likely to commit violence there. So the apparent realization is not there for any bigger crime. You have invoked 144, so why there is a need of a communication block down there? That's totally suppressing. That's totally the muzzling of the protest there, so that people are not connected and no protest can take place there. Means you are denying the protest right there. This is also the meaning of that decision there. So that's why stifling the mere hint of dissent through bans on the internet will only send us racing towards a bottomless pit. Surely it looks like that, and 67% of the documented cases of web shutdowns around the world last year took place in India. What can be bigger than that? What kind of country we are becoming? And that's why we are losing the image of a greatly democratic country. That's the main issue important for GS paper 1, 2, 3, 4 and the essay section. Thanks a lot. Keep watching. It was a bit sad.